The rescue pod drifted through the debris field like a dying ember, its hull scarred by plasma burns and punctured in a dozen places. Captain James Lockhart's hands trembled as he worked the manual override, coaxing the battered vessel toward the larger wreckage. His ship, the freight hauler Distant Hope, had been vaporized 3 hours ago during a surprise attack by Krell raiders. He was the only survivor. The distress beacon had been faint, barely registering on his emergency scanner. Standard protocol said to ignore it, to focus on his own survival and make for the nearest relay station. But James had never been good at following protocol. His father used to say it would get him killed one day. Maybe today was that day. The source of the beacon came into view through the cracked viewport. A Vashtari royal cruiser, or what remained of it. The elegant curves of the alien vessel were twisted and broken, its bioluminescent hull panels dark and cold. The Vashtari were the oldest spacefaring race in the known galaxy, their empire spanning thousands of worlds. Their ships were works of art, grown rather than built, and seeing one destroyed felt like witnessing the desecration of a temple. James maneuvered the pod alongside the cruiser's emergency airlock. The mechanism was different from human designs, but desperation made him quick. He forced the seal, equalizing pressure, and pulled himself through into the dead ship. Emergency lighting flickered sporadically, casting strange shadows along the organic corridors. James followed the beacon signal deeper into the vessel, past the bodies of Vashtari crew members still strapped into their stations. He whispered apologies as he passed them, though he knew they couldn't hear. The throne room, or what he assumed was a throne room, lay at the heart of the ship. The doors had been sealed from the inside, and it took James 10 minutes to cut through with his plasma torch. When he finally breached the entrance, he found her. She was tall, even collapsed against the far wall. Her skin held the characteristic iridescence of Vashtari nobility, shimmering with colors that had no names in human languages. Forearms hung limply at her sides, and her head was crowned with a crystalline formation that marked her as royalty. Blood, dark purple and luminescent, seeped from wounds across her torso. James rushed forward, his basic medical training kicking in. He applied pressure to the worst wounds, ignoring the way his hands burned from contact with her blood. The Vashtari were biologically incompatible with humans, their chemistry alien and often toxic. But he couldn't just let her die. Her eyes opened, multiple lids retracting to reveal pupils that held entire nebulae within them. She spoke, her voice like crystal bells underwater. James's universal translator, damaged in the attack, caught only fragments. "Human," she said, the word clear despite the device's malfunction. "Why?" "Because it's right," James answered, working frantically to stop the bleeding. "Because somebody has to." She reached up with one trembling hand and touched his face. Her fingers were cold, but the gesture was gentle. "You are killing yourself to save me." James looked down at his hands, seeing the chemical burns spreading up his arms. She was right. The toxicity of her blood was being absorbed through his skin. In another hour, maybe less, his nervous system would shut down. But if he stopped applying pressure, she would bleed out in minutes. "Then we'd better work fast," he said, and smiled. Time became fluid. James talked to keep them both conscious, rambling about Earth, about his childhood on Mars Colony 7, about the stars he'd seen and the places he'd been. She listened, her breathing labored, and occasionally she would speak. Her name was Lyrene. She was the third queen of the Vashtari Empire, returning from a diplomatic mission when the Krell had ambushed her fleet. She was 200 years old, which was young for her people. She had never met a human before. "Your species is considered primitive," she said, her voice growing weaker. "Dangerous. Short-lived and violent." "We can be," James admitted, feeling numbness creeping up his arms. "But we can also be better than that." Some of us try. Anyway, rescue ships arrived eventually, drawn by the beacon. Vashtari medical teams swarmed the throne room, their technology far beyond anything humanity possessed. They stabilized their queen within minutes, their multi-limbed bodies moving with practiced efficiency. They tried to help James, but he waved them away. "Take care of her first," he insisted. "I can wait." He couldn't, really. The toxins had spread too far, and his body was already shutting down. But Lyrain was safe, and that mattered more. The last thing he remembered was Lyrain calling his name as the medical team carried her away. Then darkness claimed him, and he knew nothing more. James woke up in a human hospital 3 weeks later. The doctors said it was a miracle he'd survived it all. The Vashtari had shared their medical technology, purging the toxins from his system, but the damage had been extensive. He would recover, they promised, though it would take time. What they didn't tell him was that the Vashtari Empire had forbidden any contact between him and Lyrain. The third queen had violated numerous protocols by allowing the human to touch her, to see her weakened. The scandal had rocked the royal court. For the good of diplomatic relations, all parties agreed that James Lockhart should return to human space and forget the incident ever happened. He tried. He took work on different ships, traveled to different sectors, kept himself busy. But he never forgot the queen with nebulae in her eyes, or the way she had looked at him in those final moments. 5 years passed. James had settled on Frontier Station Osiris, a ramshackle collection of docking bays and habitation modules on the edge of explored space. He worked as a salvage consultant, helping retrieve valuable cargo from derelict ships. It was quiet work, solitary, which suited him fine. The station's alert klaxons shattered the morning calm. James was drinking synthetic coffee in the observation deck when every screen suddenly displayed the same symbol, the royal crest of the Vashtari Empire. A Vashtari diplomatic vessel was requesting permission to dock, and it was carrying someone important. James watched through the observation window as the ship glided into the docking bay. It was smaller than the cruiser he remembered, but no less beautiful, its hull pulsing with gentle light. The airlock cycled, and figures emerged. She walked at the center of a protective detail, her 4 arms adorned with ceremonial bands, her crystalline crown catching the station's harsh lights and transforming them into rainbows. But it was unmistakably her, Lyrain, the third queen. James set down his coffee, his hands steady despite his racing heart. He didn't move, didn't go to meet her. If she wanted to see him, she would find him. And if she didn't, well, he would respect that too. She found him within the hour. The observation deck cleared quickly when her guards arrived. They took positions at the exits, but came no closer, giving them privacy. Lyrain approached slowly, and James stood, suddenly aware of how shabby he looked compared to her magnificence. "Hello, James Lockhart," she said, and her voice was exactly as he remembered. "Your Majesty," he replied, unsure of the proper protocol. He settled for a slight bow. "I searched for you," she said without preamble. "For 5 years I searched. My court forbade it, my advisors counseled against it, and the diplomatic corps nearly revolted. But I searched anyway." James felt something crack open in his chest. "Why?" Lyrain moved closer until he could see the color shifting beneath her skin, the way her eyes held entire galaxies. "Because you gave your life for mine without hesitation. Because you treated me not as a queen, not as an alien, but as a person worth saving. Because in all my years, across all the worlds I have known, I have never met anyone with a soul as beautiful as yours." She reached out, all 4 hands extending, and James took them despite knowing the contact would burn. Her skin was still cold, still toxic to his biology, but he didn't care. "The Vashtari do not love as humans do," she continued. "Our bonds are different, deeper. written into the very fabric of our being. When you saved me, when you chose to die so that I might live, you created a bond I cannot break. I am bound to you, James Lockhart, in ways my people have no words to describe. James felt tears on his face. I'm just a salvage worker. I'm nobody important. You are the man who taught a queen what true nobility looks like, Lorraine said. You are the reason I am alive. And if you will have me, I would spend the rest of your short, brilliant life at your side. The diplomatic implications were staggering. The scandal would echo through both their civilizations. His life would never be simple again, never be quiet or safe. But as James looked into those eyes full of nebulae, he realized none of that mattered. I would be honored, he said. Lorraine pulled him closer, her crystalline crown chiming softly as she leaned down to press her forehead against his. The gesture was deeply intimate in Vestari culture, a declaration that transcended words. Around them, her guards averted their eyes respectfully. Then come with me, she whispered. Come see the stars through my eyes. Let me show you wonders beyond human imagining. Let me give you everything I am for all the time we have. James thought of his father's warning that his inability to follow protocol would get him killed. He thought of the quiet life he'd built, the safety of obscurity. Then he thought of the queen bleeding out in a ruined throne room, and the choice that had seemed so simple tea